Welcome to Gaming, the new and revamped version of what was once called the Indie by Design podcast. We've changed our release schedule a little, which means that you're now going to be seeing new episodes from us every Thursday. The hosts remain myself, John Robertson, alongside Stace Harmon. Some episodes will just be us and you, and some episodes will feature guests from around the games industry. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and you can follow us on Twitter at Indie by Design to stay up to date with all of our announcements relating to this podcast and the books that we create. And while you're there, you'll also see a link to our Discord and a link to our website, so do check those out as well. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so our last episode was back in, nearly 2 years ago now, although we're back in 2018, November 2018, but it's not like we've just been standing still doing nothing in those 2 years. So what have we been doing, Stace? How have we been out there in the public eye?
We've been busy. Certainly, the world has been pretty busy too. We've consulted on various games, as is part of our business. Some loads of projects for loads of developers and publishers, which is always interesting to peek behind the curtain. We also did Oddworld Abe's Origins. That was a Kickstarter that we ran a couple of years ago. Available now, yep. Ding. Yep, that's a book that's available on our website, indiebydesign.net. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. It was very successful. I think the fans seem to enjoy that. And we've since moved on to a new book. Big heavy tome. This next one's going to be too. That is 20 Double Fine Years. Unsurprisingly, it's in conjunction and collaboration with Double Fine, who turned 20 this year. So yeah, that's currently available as well. doublefinebook.com. That's available for pre-orders, and that's due to be released Q2 2021. So yeah, we have been very busy, and we felt like now was a good time to bring the podcast back, to revive it in a different format this time round. Yeah. There's going to be a lot more of you and I talking. Previously it was much more just one or the other of us with a guest.
So we're really bringing it back because 2 years is long enough for our egos to take being away from, being on a podium and talking at people.
Yeah, I need a top up. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so the format this time around is we're going to be asking a single question each week and seeking to answer that question to the best of our ability. And this week, that question is, what games do you love but would never play again? Now, we've got some honourable mentions. We've also got some slight criteria, I think it's fair to say, that we put on this, which was that we haven't included any incredibly old games or games from specifically, I guess, from our childhood too much, because it's easy to look back at certain old games and say that you wouldn't play them for one reason or another because they're just not the way they were made is very different to how games are made now. So we've focused for the most part on more modern games, with a slight exception on this first one, because this spans a tremendous amount of time and starts in some of our childhoods and is still going now. And that series, as it is in this case, is Pokemon. Now, John, I understand that this is a series that you've got a lot of love for, but don't really feel a calling to anymore. So, I mean, I guess the first thing is, like, why do you love it, and where did that come from originally? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's weird because I still do feel a calling to it, I think. Not to undermine what you just said, but I still do feel a calling to it. And I was called to it, the recent one, Pokemon Sword and Shield on Switch. But I suppose answering the call to the latest one has kind of, I suppose in a way, it's both highlighted why, or reinforced why I really love it, but it's also highlighted why I probably don't really want to play it again. I say probably just as a disclaimer, like if they change up the formula a bit, then I might be tempted to go back, but I can't see them doing that. I mean, it's so successful the way it is. Why would they? So I played I don't know if I've played every single Pokemon release, but I've played the vast majority of them, from the original Game Boy ones, Blue and Red and Blue. And I suppose, I mean, it taps into, for me, it was like the absolute quintessential elements of an RPG, a JRPG, distilled into a really simple but really rewarding and entertaining form. Like, you walk around, you have random battles, you level up Pokemon rather than yourself, although your collective Pokemon level really is your level. And there are boss fights, very evenly spaced in the forms of the gyms and in the towns that you go through. And, you know, there's a rival that follows you up with like a sort of subplot. So it's got all of those JRPG elements, and I love JRPGs, but this is all just distilled into a very clean, easily understood, easily engaged with, easily rewarding form.
And it's clearly something you've had. This isn't a one-off title that you played once upon a time and then never really went back to, and so it's almost a nostalgia thing. This is something you've kept up with through the years and spanning some 20-something years.
Yeah.
And have even played that most recent one, as you mentioned. And it's... So I'm interested then, because Pokemon is a series that has largely passed me by in my personal game-playing career. It's a thing that I understand to be brilliantly made, and I can understand the appeal of it intellectually, but it's not something that's ever clicked with me. So I wonder, do you feel like, is it your own tastes that have changed predominantly? Is it that the formula has kind of stood still, has remained too static, and you've just kind of moved on from that? Or like, what do you attribute this like desire to not go and play the games?
Yeah, I think nostalgia is a big part of it. Nostalgia is a big part, I think, both positively and negatively. Nostalgia brings me back and makes me love the series, but nostalgia also kills it for me when I play the most recent one. I'm still nostalgic about it in like weird kind of sentimental ways as well. So I will always... So Bulbasaur has always been my favourite Pokemon, and whenever a Bulbasaur comes up in any of the games, I will always get Bulbasaur, and I will always have him as my... Well, I call it him. He's a him in... Or I perceive him to be a him anyway in the TV show, the original TV show. So I'll always have a Bulbasaur, and I will always force Bulbasaur not to evolve. I'll always stop his evolution. Right. I will never allow him to evolve into Venusaur and Ivysaur. But yeah, nostalgia makes me come back to it, which is why I've got Sword and Shield. Like I really do. You know, you're trying to just hit those emotions as you had when you were a kid, and it's like, yeah, no, you get excited for it when you start playing it, and that sees you through. That's enough. Nostalgia is enough to see. Like, you know, I've not just played a little bit of Sword and Shield. I've played like 12 or 14 hours of it. Like I've given it like a real good go. So that nostalgia draws you, but the nostalgia also kills it for me a little bit as well, because what you're playing in Sword and Shield is structurally so similar to the original games. Obviously, there are more bells and whistles on it, and there are different Pokemon, and it looks much nicer and whatever. Well, I say it looks nicer. It doesn't look as charming. It looks more technically nice. I'm not sure it looks as charming. It looks a bit more kind of just typical anime now. But the nostalgia element kills it a bit because it's so similar structurally and in terms of the emotions that it rewards you with to the original game. It makes me think about those original games and think about the emotions and the joy that those original games gave me. But this one, maybe because it's over familiarity, I don't know, but this one gives you those same emotions but in like a weaker form. Like there's just like a shadow of those emotions, so you're kind of experiencing some of the same rewards, but they're just that little bit weaker, so they can never satisfy you properly in the same way. And it feels a bit, I don't know, it's just sad, really. Like it just feels a bit sad. Like it's like there's this thing that like you really love, and you're trying to really like rebuild your relationship with it, but you just can't. Like it's just, you know, it's just over. Yeah.
And so has that, I mean, you mentioned that you played you've given it a go, you played 12, 14 odd hours of it, which the little that I understand of Pokemon or know about Pokemon, that's enough time for you to get a feel for the game. It's enough time to get a feel for any game, and sometimes even complete, many games. But in terms of Pokemon terms, that would not be considered a long time. If you were into Sword and Shield, you'd be playing it for dozens, if not potentially.
Yeah, it depends what you want to
achieve.
If you want to get all the Pokemon, definitely. If you just want to like race through it and get all the gym badges and complete the story, it's a much shorter amount of time.
Okay.
But I do tend to just sort of try
And
to
so
find
does
all
the
the Pokemon in all the areas, which I don't know, maybe I'd like it more if I just race through it nowadays, but I don't really have the incentive to do that.
And this one is slightly more. Is this one like slightly more open world? Is that in terms of design?
Yeah, there are some wider areas, and there are some new, like sort of dungeony kind of elements to it, which are, they're well designed, and they do kind of hit those Pokemon points of it being kind of very streamlined and very clean, just like the rest of its design is. But yeah, I mean, it's not enough. I mean, like dungeon crawling or those sort of elements, and it's more just grind elements that they've added to it, really, which kind of elongate the length of the game. But still, structurally, it's the same reward. It's the same like emotional reward systems that it's still tapping into all the time.
Well, so that talk of this kind of open world element.
Yeah. So yours is So you're talking about your first one is a very specific game, a single game, rather than an entire series.
And it's a game. It's a game that is potentially unlikely to ever develop into a series, maybe because of how it was received and how divisive it was. And so my first game is Death Stranding. And so this is...
A lot of people hate this game. A lot of people love this game.
Now, and you and I had quite different experiences with it. I played it through from start to finish and raved about it to most people anybody that would listen. But you kind of bounced off it pretty hard, right? I think it's, I don't know.
Yeah,
how much did you
I played,
play
probably, less than Pokemon, sure. Probably 5 or 6 hours of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got all the elements that I think I would typically love in game. In theory, it's got ambiguity. It's got narrative as a strong focus. It's got sort of brave new game mechanics, and it's kind of up its own arse a bit. But I don't know. I just couldn't get. It was just a bit too sort of. I don't know. It just felt like the dialogue, especially, was so like B movie to me. It was like Starship Troopers, but not a joke. Starship Troopers knowingly takes the piss out of itself. Like Death Stranding seemed very po-faced about it.
Well, but it does. I think Death Stranding. The more Death Stranding goes on, the more meta it gets. The more self-aware it becomes, and that was something that whilst I was in that bubble, whilst I was playing it, I loved. There is a very particular moment. Probably it's an odd moment, but it's probably my moment of the game was a moment at which, as Sam, you're connecting up all of these towns, all of these outposts, and you're doing vital work in this world. You're kind of the man to get things done, and partway through, off the back of connecting the latest knot, as it's called, it's basically just another settlement. You connect this settlement, and there's plenty of people lining up to sing your praises and tell you you're doing this vital work, and nobody else can do it, and it's incredible what you've achieved and how important you're becoming to this world and to the ongoing survival of the human species. And then the very next request that you get, the very next job request that you get, is a pizza delivery. And I loved the juxtaposition of what that encompasses, this notion that you've just been told you're this so incredibly important, and how quickly the world starts to take you for granted. How quickly you become this thing of once vital work is now becoming incredibly derivative, and somebody wants a pizza. There's more to it than that, because the person ordering the pizza is Higgs, which is kind of one of the big bads of the game. But this notion, and it's a job that it's an optional thing, you can choose to do it or not, but the notion that a lot of people would then choose to go and deliver that pizza because this is a game and the game's asking me to do something, so I'm probably going to do it, and playing into that same mindset of something that once was lauded very recently as being so vital and such important work, then gets to, well, how can we adapt this so that things are just more convenient for us? How can we make deliveries more convenient? And that notion in a world where we're just used to, depending on where you live, used to being able to not just order something online and receive it the next day, but order something online that day and receive it later that day. It really just, it talked to me, and I loved that, how much it was self-aware, and how much it was poking fun at that, and how much a lot of the players kind of just bought into it, because it's like, well, yeah, okay, somebody needs a pizza, I'm going to go and deliver it.
Yeah, well, in a way, I suppose that the players buying into it are the punchline of the joke, really.
Yeah.
Kojima has set up the joke by saying that players will just do anything that you like, as long as they can take off a mission, they'll do it. Yeah. And the punchline is they did it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is, and it's all, of course, it's all there. There's a lot of stuff. You're paid effectively in likes, and there's reference there to oxytocin, and how like connecting with people boosts your mood, and how also this positive reinforcement of receiving likes for doing a good job, even though it has no intrinsic value, because this is a world in which once you've connected certain places together, you can 3D print stuff. You don't need money to buy stuff, so, and therefore you're not paid in money, you're paid in likes, which serve to level you up and stuff, but you're not spending it as a currency. And so the idea that then this gets boiled down to pizza, and then later on there's like beer deliveries and all of this, and it's that, and that's not why I love it, but that sums up for me what it did for me on that kind of level. It's like, I appreciate that.
So it sounds like then I've got it all wrong, and it's actually the most amazing, self-referential, most sort of poignant, probing game of our lifetimes. So why wouldn't you want to play that again?
Well, yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, it gets incredibly ridiculous. However self-aware it might be, it gets incredibly ridiculous, particularly towards the end. There is like a Baywatch slow motion running scene, running hand in hand down a beach. There are references that the characters make to Mario and Princess Peach. It's in many ways ludicrous. But the reason mostly that I wouldn't play it again is because it was a very complete experience for me from start to finish. Stuff like the licensed music, I've got that on a playlist that I listen to, and that gives me a very specific feeling that I had, this kind of isolation feeling, this kind of just going out into the world and paying very close attention to what I'm doing and where I'm putting my feet, and being alone in this endeavour. It prompts a lot of feelings in me, but I feel like I can't go back to that and have that experience again. Like, if I could go back and have the experience for the first time again, that's one thing, but going back to it and trying to somehow recapture that, or somehow play it with foreknowledge of what's to come, and none of it feels new anymore. It just, I mean, as an experience, it's one thing perhaps, and as a game, it's like I have no need to go back and repeat that. I was on that camp, in the camp of loving it and feeling that and being glad that it exists, and understanding that not everybody likes it, but I wouldn't go near it again. I'm done.
Maybe it's one of those things where maybe its real power is in like the kind of the thinking about it, and the that looking back and trying to work out its themes and its impact that it had at the time, rather than just simply, rather than being in the moment and experiencing it. Maybe. Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, it's not a game. It's probably not a game really that you don't really get better at it
the more that you play it. It's not really... It's a game that you move through. You can grind if you want. You can take on side deliveries and whatever and get, boost your stats. But it's not really doing anything for you. You're not building up to, in the way that perhaps a JRPG you are, where you have to go away and do a load of grinding to come back and beat this boss. That doesn't really exist. You don't have a fight in it until, 10 hours in or something like that. So it isn't a game that really rewards you for... in that way that a lot of games do. It doesn't really reward you for the more you play it, the better you get at it. It's kind of... I don't feel the need to go back and kind of perfect anything. It's just an experience to have had, and I've had it and moved on. But that, I feel that leads in the notion of like getting better at something. The more you do it, leads very much into your next choice, because this is a game that you put an awful lot of time into. So what is your next choice for a game that you love but wouldn't go back to?
Yeah, so I put a huge amount of time trying to get a lot better, and did get very good at Apex Legends. I still love it. It's one of those games where I still do kind of really... I miss playing it. I miss like just the excitement of it, and the fact that you were so present in the game all the time. Like you were just your mind was just fully involved with it. Like you had to be, in order to get through it, in order to perform at any half decent level. You couldn't take anything for granted. Like you had to be fully aware of everything all the time. Like what guns you were picking up, where you were going, why you were going there, where the circle was going to be, where other teams might be coming from, what your teammates were doing, everything. I put a lot of hours into that game and got pretty decent at it. But I was playing it for a lot. I was playing it like for a few hours a day.
And not just time either, but some money as well. Some small investment of money went into it, because you also bought controller. Adapters.
I bought like paddles for the controller, so I could. This was playing on PlayStation. I played a little bit on PC, but it was predominantly on PlayStation. Paddles for the controller so that I could. What did I have on the paddles? I had jump and reload, I think, on the paddles, so that I could, I never had to.
What else would you have on?
Yeah,
on the paddles?
so that I never had to take my right thumb off of the thumbstick, so that I could always be aiming 100% of the time.
So you loved it. You played a lot of it. You got good at it. Certainly to my eyes, and certainly compared to me. I mean, we played a game of it once or twice, which was hilarious. I think our approaches are slightly incompatible, or my thing of just drop into the world and have a look around, and it's a bit of a jaunt. Probably wasn't the most effective competitive tactic.
That's not for Apex.
No. So you've loved it. So then why did you get burnt out on it, or like what?
I think I probably got burnt out on it. I was playing it so much, got burnt out on it, and it was one of those things where when you're so engaged in it like that, I think there was like a week where I didn't play it. I can't remember why, but I couldn't. I was away somewhere else. I was away from games, and then when I came back and had the chance to play it again, trying to get back into that zone, even like, I don't know, maybe this says more about me than it says about the game, but trying to get back into that zone again was really hard once I'd left it, even for that short amount of time. This does happen on games to me quite a lot. I invest so much in it and I become so obsessed with it. Happens in a lot of things, not just games. But then as soon as I step away from it, going back in seems really like an exhausting task, because I know that in order for me to get back to that state, I'm going to have to absolutely dedicate myself to it again. And it's not a case of like having to, like, I won't be able to stop myself doing it. So the initial step feels really exhausting and really tough, because I know I'm about to enter like a whole new world here, and I won't be able to draw myself away from it again.
And so, but just to clarify that, is that's we're not necessarily talking about that everybody else had moved so far ahead in terms of performance that you were now languishing somewhere near the bottom where previously you would win. This is more of a personal level thing.
Yeah, it's not it's not. No, in a week, people are not gonna, like, the meta of the game is not going to change in a week unless they bring out a big update or a new season or whatever, which they have.
So you were still good at it. You weren't, maybe not as sharp, maybe not. You were.
Yeah, and when I say, like, step away and, like, not feel like I can get back to that level, it's get back to that level of obsession, get back to that level of involvement, not necessarily get back to that level of skill. That would have taken a couple of hours probably. Just to get the muscle memory back, which, you're not going to lose the muscle memory in a week.
So it's that investment of emotional energy, of intellectual energy, of just
and also just
being back in that world.
Yeah, and also just going back to, okay, every time I play a game for fun, it will only be Apex. It will never be another game. Like, it's just completely dominated. So unless it was a game for work, it would be Apex only. That's it.
Right.
And also, I never really. It would have been easier, I think, if I knew more people that played it seriously. I knew people who played it, like, dabbled in it now and again, but it was annoying to me to play with those people because they just didn't understand, like, the meta of the game. It's like, why are you dropping over there? Like, we need to go over here. Why have you still got that gun that you had 5 minutes ago? Like, what are you doing? Like, and so it'd be annoying to me because I didn't have people that I thought were. Like, researching the game enough, trying to understand the game enough, trying to understand every single element and how they all fit together in the game. So it was kind of, I know that sounds like, I'm sort of lauding myself over the other people, but I don't know, like, when you're obsessed with it to that degree, if you're engaging with it with other people, then they've also got to be doing the same. Otherwise you feel, it feels lonely almost doing it because you're there, you're with someone, but you're totally disconnected in terms of thinking about it from how they are.
You're talking something of a different language, I suppose, because it's not. We're both sharing this experience, but not in anywhere near the same way.
Yeah, so I'd never ever want to play with you again. Because
I do not know what you're talking about.
It
was amazing.
I mean, yeah, it was.
Surely
it ruined it for both of us.
I had a great time. Surely it had some comedic value. I mean, there's something.
Yeah, like the first game, the first half a game was funny, but then it was just like, well, we're dead now.
He's serious. Oh, right, this is actually how he's playing. Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool.
It's getting to a point where just hoping that you die early, so I can just get on with it. I just do it by myself. But you're okay. That's enough about Apex. Otherwise, I'm just going to be tempted to fire it up again.
Turn into
I am way behind the meta of the game. I haven't played it. Now it would take a long time to learn what there's whole new characters and stuff been added since I last played it.
So my final choice then is a game where I have there's no danger of me inflicting myself upon anybody, which is good. It's a single player game from a while back, 10 years or so back. And it's the original Plants vs. Zombies, and to a wider extent, I guess, like the entire series, but really the original Plants vs. Zombies, which I played some of on PC, but I played primarily actually on my old iPod Touch. Remember when they were a thing? Wow, that was a tiny little screen. And I played a lot. I mean, I played a lot of Plants vs. Zombies. I played it through multiple times.
Do you not get to a point where you just know the pattern though, and you know not the pattern, not necessarily memorize the pattern, but memorize the pattern of things that you have to do in order to dominate that map?
Yes, and I think this is probably part of the problem because it's like a journey of diminishing returns. Effectively, I think of it as like having a favorite jigsaw puzzle, a favorite physical jigsaw puzzle that you sit down and you do, and every now and then you'll get it out and you'll be like, you get to a point quite quickly where you don't need to look at the picture on the box, you're just putting it together.
I've never had a favorite. I've never done a jigsaw more than once, the same jigsaw more than once. I think 99.99999% of people in the world never do more than one time on the same jigsaw.
Well, I may be that 0.0001%, because it's like a comforting thing. You get it out not to, I mean, of course, not to achieve that finished picture, not to look at that and go like, I wonder what it's going to be this time. I'm going to be surprised by this. It's the process. It's the sitting down with a cup of coffee or something and just like the soothing process of being engaged with something and not really thinking too much about anything else. It's like I'm focused on this thing, and that has a degree of
like mindfulness.
Soothing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a mindfulness. It's like I am very present in what I'm doing. And Plants vs Zombies was that to me, and part of that was because, yes, quite quickly you do learn what you need to do, or at least what things are most effective, what combinations of plants you're pitting against the zombies in this kind of quite basic or quite relaxed tower defense style game. The zombies almost always come in from the same place. Sometimes they drop in and halfway through your setup, but generally they come in from the right of the screen, and they walk quite slowly because they're zombies. And it wasn't just the main game; it was also the Zen Garden part of the game. That was another thing that I would go in, and there's this very soothing music when you go into this little greenhouse and you water your plants, and they every now and then pop and give you some coins. So it was it was kind of a cyclical, habitual thing, really. It was like I'll check in on my Zen Garden, I'll play a couple of levels of Plants vs Zombies to achieve that kind of that notion of mindfulness, that notion of I am now engaged in this thing and nothing else. The problem with that is that I played it so much that it became rote rather than being sort of habit, or rather than being this soothing cycle. It just became a thing that I was doing by rote, and so then it loses it stops having that power to bring you into the moment, and your mind wanders and you just start thinking about whatever else, and at that point the game didn't have anything else to offer me. I mean, I think I probably did over 100 hours of Plants vs Zombies over the years, and that would be over probably a 2 or 3 year period.
Just the first game?
Just the first game, yeah, because I bounced hard off the second game. Oh my goodness, that felt. What I remember very specifically about the second game was the microtransactions and how egregious they were, and how just it was. Oh, it felt horrible. This notion of if you want to progress to here, you have to have a certain amount of this currency. And you can get that by playing, sure, but you're going to have to repeat levels to get it, and really the best way to get it is just to buy, spend a couple of quid, and then it was horrible. I didn't. I got hardly anywhere through the sequel. So yeah, it ran its course. I got a lot out of it while I played it, but it was a done deal. And yeah, the notion of going back to it now would I don't think it's got anything else to offer me, which is fair enough. I don't know that it was ever meant to be played to that extent, so it's done.
I wonder if that's that's a microcosm of tower defense games in general. They don't seem to be really around anymore in the same way. I know there's Balloons on mobile, which is doing okay, but you just don't. There's just fewer and fewer of them. It seems as though it's not really a genre that's sort of stood the test of time so well.
No, and an honourable mention would go to Pixel Junk Monsters, which was a very similar thing. Not necessarily in terms of form, but that's a tower defense game that has the same sort of feeling to it. I played that loads as well. I bounced off the sequel, yeah, and that was from maybe around the same time period, perhaps a little bit later. I had it on Vita. So yeah, perhaps it's not. I haven't found perhaps there's some recommendations to be had for finding another game of that ilk that's a bit more complex that I could get into again. But yeah, Plants vs Zombies is, pun intended, dead to me.
All right, so that feels like a good time to end it then. We'll kill the podcast there.
This episode.
We'll kill. Well, yeah, right. We'll kill this episode of this podcast there. So if you've got any thoughts about which games you've loved but would never play again, then you can get in touch with us and tell us all about it. You can follow us on Twitter at Indie by Design, and there you'll also find the link to our Discord. But otherwise, leave us 5 stars on iTunes if you liked what you heard, and we'll be back again next week.